I recently started a new job. In this job, I work from home, and I'd like to build a new desk for my home office. I decided that I'd like to build a desk that's kind of like a farmhouse table, or at least it was inspired by a farmhouse table that I saw at a really expensive antique shop here in town. That same antique shop sells refurbished building materials that they pull out of old buildings that they tear down. And so I bought some of this old barn board. This is pine. I think it was like a threshing floor or something. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick, about 6 inches wide, and it's got a tongue and groove on it. I thought that this would give the table a really neat character that would fit well with kind of the older style of decorating that we've got going on in our house. Because this was older wood that lived as a part of a barn floor for years and years before coming to me, it didn't really go together as, cleanly as you might want it to if you had taken the time to mill it specifically for this purpose. So I spent a little bit of time cleaning up the seams, and even then they didn't really come together perfectly. This project is pretty much entirely sanding, and when I'm not sanding, I'm planing with this cheese-tastic block plane that I got at the Home Depot. I mean, I guess it's satisfying seeing it all come together, but it was a huge amount of work. I mean, I spent hours planing and sanding and planing. The one forgiving thing is that it's barn board, so it is supposed to look scratched and dented and kind of knocked around a little bit. It isn't perfect, and it's not meant to look perfect. With the glue up finished and the basic sanding done, I cut the tabletop to size. And I used both the table saw and the skill saw for this. Now, the boards didn't really come together perfectly in all the spots. They're old, and they've got some knots in them, and they've got some big scratches in them, and where they butt up against one another, the tongue and groove didn't always join as closely as I would have liked it to, but that's part of the character of this old wood. I didn't really want to remove that, so instead I filled those cracks with epoxy. Now, this is a craft supply epoxy. I got this from a local craft store. It's 2 parts. You mix the part together, and it's made for this purpose, so it dries clear, and it gives you about 45 minutes of working time. But when you mix it, it does put bubbles throughout the epoxy. So you go over it with a torch after you got it down, and that torch, the heat just pulls the bubbles right out of it. It's kind of cool. The epoxy goes from being white to being clear. Once it dries, it's back to the block plane and more sanding. I swear I spent hours sanding on this. Then I used my router to put a round over edge on the desk just so that it felt nice on the hands. That's about a 1/4 inch round over edge. Nothing serious. For a finish, I decided to try something new. In the past, I've primarily used a white bond polyurethane for finishes like this just because it's really easy to apply, but it stinks and, it leaves kind of like a plasticky film on top, so I wanted to try something different. This is a Danish Oil, and Danish Oil is some kind of a urethane-verathane mixed product or something. I put 3 coats of this stuff on. Basically, you coat it on, you let it dry for a couple hours, and then you sand it and you put another coat on. And the selling point of this is that the oil dries inside of the wood, so it doesn't leave like a sticky residue or a plasticky film on top of the wood. So it's really nice. It's a very nice, natural-looking coating. And the key to Danish Oil, like stain, is that you need to wipe off the excess between each coat. Otherwise, the excess kind of sits and pools on the surface and leaves like a waxy film. Now, the Danish Oil is nice because of how natural it looks, but it's not the most permanent finish. It'll get marred by water or by scratches. So I use this diamond protection layer on top, and this stuff forms like a hard surface on top that'll help to protect the tabletop from scratching. So this is the finished tabletop. In the next video, I'll make the frame and the legs for it to sit on top of. In the meantime, if you want to keep up with what I'm doing, make sure you check me out over on Instagram at Music Police or on Twitter at Apprentice Marks. You can also subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this, or you can like this video if you want to help bolster my self-esteem. Remember, all of my stuff's available over at apprenticemarks.com, where there are videos and full write-ups and pictures of everything I do, if I ever get around to updating it. Thanks very much for tuning in. Cheers.